Third video! Finally figured that out. So, Lights Lacquer is a boutique nail polish brand founded by Kathleen Lights, a YouTuber, in 2019. And recently, I bought a few of their polishes from their Polly Pocket collection because I am not immune to propaganda. And when I mentioned them in my last video, a few of you actually left comments saying that they had a bit of a controversial past. So after looking into it, I realize now that while this was one of my more impulsive shopping decisions, literally any amount of research could have prevented this. But what's done is done. And now I'd like to talk about it. So what happened? Well, Kathleen Lights in 2017, while hanging out with Jaclyn Hill, decided to say the N-word while playing a video game. Now, a lot of people say that in context she was singing along to a song, but I've watched the video, I've listened to it as well, and it's pretty clear that she's simply saying a phrase with the N-word in it and not really singing along as if there's a song in the background. And either way, it comes out extremely casually, right after she says, like, I said the N-word, don't post that video. So there is some self-awareness there. However, her initial apology in 2017 was a written statement saying that saying the N-word did not come from a place of hate or racism, and that she was sorry. However, a lot of fans of the brand considered that this was not an adequate apology due to the fact that she didn't realize why saying the N-word and saying it so casually was bad, right? And for a lot of people, when you bring up that you are not a racist in your apology, you're kind of ignoring that a racist act without the intention of being racist still has the impact of racism, if that makes sense. So intent versus impact, it doesn't really matter what the intentions were if she still hurt people. And to add insult to injury, her brother later posted on Instagram in support of her, stating that Cubans and Hispanics in general that live in Miami are a different breed of people who are allowed to say the N-word because to them it's very casual. To them it's not hateful, and that times have changed. And that's simply not true, alright? I'm not a Cuban living in Miami. I'm Mexican, and I know how much racism there is in Latin America, how much anti-blackness there is specifically. It's a huge issue, and yet many Latin Americans seem to want to be a part of the black community or want to be marginalized in the US simply to claim the ability to say the N-word. And it's ridiculous. These are the same people that refuse to recognize that there is a racism issue in their own country, in their communities. Honestly, the arrogance of relating to the black experience as a white Latin American is disgusting. There's no... Put simply, it is absolutely ridiculous, and people my skin tone and white Latin Americans like Kathleen Lights and myself have more of an obligation to stand against these forms of casual racism. Look at us. No one's going to automatically suspect us of not being from the US. So clearly we can use that privilege to platform ideas that aren't racist. So after that initial apology and her liking her brother's post, she decided to apologize again in January of 2021, and this time people felt it was more genuine. However, the context surrounding her second apology was that in nail polish communities and in her own Facebook community, the video of her saying the N-word was circulating once again. And people were planning a boycott of the brand. Now, this second apology was released on her Instagram stories and later saved as a highlight called Accountability. The first apology was also a statement posted to Instagram. However, fans of her have noticed that her largest platform is YouTube, and she has not apologized on that platform. Believe it or not, this is extremely common for YouTubers that apologize for something, a controversial past of saying a racial slur. I have found in my own research as a part of my master's degree about YouTuber apologies that YouTubers will strategically place their apology video or statement on a platform other than YouTube. And now what this does is cut down a significant portion of your audience, and rather than living on your biggest page, your apology, and thus the reminder of controversy, exists on a separate, less popular platform. It's extremely common, and I've seen it done for people apologizing about racial slurs specifically as well. So it's extremely intentional. Now, it's up to the individual whether or not they accept her apology. It's up to anyone that is actually affected by the N-word to accept her apology. And I'd like to say that it's not anyone's obligation to forgive after an apology is made. One of the consequences of causing harm is that the people who you've harmed don't have to forgive you. So this controversy, as well as her past support for Black Lives Matter, has come across as performative for many of her fans. I actually took it upon myself to look through her Instagram to the point where she did post about Black Lives Matter, and there were a lot of comments that she chose not to respond to. There were comments from Hispanic people specifically stating that Black Lives Matter was a movement that was an overreaction, and there were a whole lot of All Lives Matter type comments. So, because she is a creator, a part of a community that experiences racism and deals it out frequently, I think she should have used her platform to talk about how, as a white Cuban, she has extreme privilege in the US, and that racism is not something she can brush off, as well as saying the N-word. In 2020, the brand Lights Lacquer also collaborated with Nude Sticks, another beauty brand, and the co-founder of Nude Sticks was found to have posted a photo with her in a Trump hat in front of the Trump Hotel. Clearly, fans of Lights Lacquer as well as Nude Sticks were concerned that this meant that the co-founder was endorsing Donald Trump, especially at the time of 2017 when he had recently won the presidential election in the US. Now, the co-founder has then responded saying that she is Canadian. She did not have an understanding of American politics in 2017 when she was 18 and visiting the US, and that the picture was something funny and not meant to be taken as an endorsement. My response to that is that in 2017, there was a lot of media all over the world reporting on Donald Trump, his words, his actions, and even her age doesn't really absolve her of the ignorance there. As the co-founder of a beauty brand, and a public co-founder at that, anything that she posts on her Instagram can be taken as an endorsement. Her choosing to upload the photo to her Instagram was a mistake when she wasn't willing to defend it, right? Because clearly there are a lot of brands out there that do support Trump, that have made political contributions, right? However, if you aren't going to stand behind that and instead attempt to gaslight or trick people saying that's not how you really feel, not only is it very obvious, but to me it feels like you have a value, right? You have values, a certain set of values, and you won't stand behind them when it comes to making money. Mexicans here, Latin Americans here, have an issue of racism still. And there seems to be a lot of feigned ignorance, maybe even incompetence, where people being Latin Americans, will assume that because they are marginalized in the US, they are a marginalized community, that they somehow have everything in common with Black communities in the US. But when you refuse to support the Black community or call out racism within your own, I don't see how you would claim the use of the N-word, which is absolutely ridiculous in the first place. It doesn't make sense, and it is such a weird argument. And I've heard it again and again and again. Not just from Cubans, not just from Mexicans, many, many Latin Americans. Latin Americans need to be vocal about racism and colorism, especially when it doesn't apply to them, because it is disingenuous to say that those issues don't exist within their communities or countries, but also that it doesn't affect them. People would rather believe that they are amongst the majority, i.e. that they are whiter than they are, in order to feel a part of a group. In June of 2021, Lights Lacquer put together a pride bundle of their existing polishes to put together a bundle of the rainbow, and they stated that 20% of proceeds of that bundle would go towards an LGBTQ charity. At the time of the bundle's release, they did not specify which charity. This led to a lot of confusion on the part of the brand's fans, and when pressed, they did receive an answer finally, stating that the proceeds would go to the Trevor Project. Something that I found odd is that looking through the past comments on those posts about Pride, is that not only were there a total of 2 Pride posts in June, but also that many commenters were pointing out that LGBTQ creators were not included on the PR list for that bundle. And the creators that did receive the bundle, oddly enough, I found one stating that 100% of the proceeds would go to the Trevor Project. I'm unsure if 100% did end up going to the Trevor Project, especially because initially on their own website and on their own platforms, Lights Lacquer stated that it would only be 20%. Upon further investigation, I found more than a few discrepancies about this 20% versus 100% number. So here's Lights Lacquer original post about the Paint Your Pride campaign, and notice it doesn't actually include a percentage or the fact that any proceeds would be going to a charitable organization. Meanwhile, the following screenshots are all talking about 20% of the proceeds going to an LGBTQ organization, but not specifically the Trevor Project. In this final screenshot from Dissy Nails, we see that she writes 100% of the sales from the Paint Your Pride bundle will go to a nonprofit organization supporting LGBTQIA people. I found a few industry magazines online talking about the Paint Your Pride campaign, and these are usually PR statements sent from the brand themselves to these magazines, and they can post them or not, depending on if they want to, right? Sometimes it's a paid relationship, sometimes it's merely promotional marketing being sent to several magazines and only a few will pick it up. Here we see that this industry magazine, Nails, says 20% of the sales would be going to benefit the Trevor Project. Meanwhile, here in Hola magazine, we also see the same 20% number, and on OK Magazine Shopping. But here at People magazine, we see that they say 100% of the proceeds will go to the Trevor Project. And Yahoo Finance also picked up the article with the Paint Your Pride bundle, and they wrote, just like People magazine, 100% of the proceeds would go to the Trevor Project. I find that kind of discrepancy incredibly odd and generally a bad business practice, especially when it comes to charitable donations that are coming from your customers' purchases. That demands transparency, so I can really see why that alone would put people off. Aside from that, it bothered many that this was yet another brand attempting to profit off of rainbow capitalism or rainbow washing by selling rainbow-colored products that would ultimately benefit the brand financially more than it would benefit gay people. Rainbow washing is ubiquitous in June when you start seeing products like hamburgers, scrunchies, cereal boxes, notebooks, eyeshadow palettes, and even vape pens turn rainbow for gay pride. And what is that actually doing? How is that benefiting gay people? But how can a brand truly support the LGBTQ community without selling rainbow products? Truthfully, they could show their support year-round simply by platforming LGBTQ creators or even donating year-round to organizations that benefit LGBTQ people. But what does it all mean, right? What does this mean for people who going forward want to buy nail polish either from Lights Lacquer or in general from any brand? There are going to be problems we run into where everything we buy has come to us in an unethical or controversial way. That's a part of the complexities of human morality as well as the realities of capitalism. There's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot in these situations, and it's that there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. And while that may be true, we can also recognize that we can make choices, however small, that do establish our voice and our values. Yes, it is extremely difficult to find a brand or a business that has a clean past or is without controversy. But the way I'm going about it is that when I know better, I do better. It isn't about shaming others or even burning items you've already paid for, but it's a matter of voting with your dollar. There is some nuance to this. There are places like Walmart that we know to be unethical, but that contain a lot of necessities and that is a huge chain of stores. So in that manner, choosing the path of least resistance for many people is simply the most affordable way that they can get groceries. But everybody needs groceries, nobody needs nail polish. And from a nail polish brand, we can demand more, we can demand better, especially considering that Lights Lacquer has competitors that don't have founders who have a video of them saying the N-word and then apologizing very poorly, right? So, moving forward, I can take Lights Lacquer off the list of brands that I choose to buy from. You might be thinking, but what about forgiveness? Can't people grow and change and move on? Yes, we can grow from our mistakes. Yes, we can move on. Again, though, the consequences of harming someone is that the person you have harmed is under no obligation to forgive you. That's not a negative thing, and that is not the end of forgiveness or redemption. In fact, what you're working towards with an apology is not forgiveness. In fact, more than a stated apology, you need to have changed behavior. That is how you would gain forgiveness. So why don't we take a look at whether or not Kathleen has exhibited changed behavior. Another big issue that fans had with Lights Lacquer at the time of her original controversy saying the N-word, as well as her initial support of Black Lives Matter, was that she had no black influencers, content creators swatching her polish on the Lights Lacquer page. In fact, I took it upon myself to look back during 2020 and 2021 at those posts to see whether or not that was accurate. And it was. I took a screen recording of all of the posts that you could scroll through during that time, and wow, you would not believe how white it is. Maybe you would believe it. This is a problem because, I'm sorry, white people are not the only people buying nail polish, right? People with this skin tone are overrepresented online, in nail polish swatches, in fashion, in beauty, etc. Now let's look at what she's done since. Lights Lacquer does now have black women swatching their polish and making it onto the Lights Lacquer page. Still less than, I think it's Kathleen herself whose hands appear most often, but still less often than their white counterparts. I don't know, after seeing brands like Holo Taco, for example, and Mooncat have several different shades, different genders even, different nail lengths, that's just more helpful as somebody wanting to purchase nail polish. And I don't really see why you would choose not to represent portions of your audience. Beyond that, in her 2021 apology, she specifically stated that she was working to make amends within the community that she's harmed. And unless she's doing that privately, we have not seen anything since. The racism in the indie polish industry and in the indie polish community extends beyond the swatchers on somebody's Instagram or website. In fact, creators of color who have called out brands for their political affiliations, racist remarks, transphobic remarks, have been attacked publicly by those brands and threatened with lawsuits. While diving into this topic, I actually found an account that has documented a lot of indie polish brands' responses to the Black Lives Matter protests of 2020. In an obvious yet hypocritical turn of events, many of these brands that were called out for their political affiliations and their own publicly expressed opinions decided to form a group where they would file lawsuits together against people who spoke out against them, spoke out about things that they disliked about the brand, like their racist or transphobic comments. So really legal financial abuse attempting to scare people out of speaking negatively about their brands. And this was largely affecting the people of color, the content creators of color that were bringing up these topics. Something this creator also talks about that I can provide only a little more context for is something called Acetone Alley, which was a nail polish Facebook group created to talk about different brands as well as document interactions with the brand, such as bad customer service reactions or bad interactions as a swatcher, or even just to express opinions about brand owners, things that they've done, etc. Now, the person running the group did have a conflict of interest, and eventually a separate group was created called Tooling Trash Can. Because Tooling Trash Can is private and Acetone Alley was deleted, there is little that I can find about what went on inside the group. However, I know there's something there because it kind of imploded in on itself and left a lot of people searching for another place to freely express their opinion on these indie polish brands. Because the implosion of Acetone Alley happened sometime in 2020 and before I started looking into indie nail polish at all, I'm going to need your help. And if any of you have stories of Acetone Alley or maybe specific grievances that were brought up against brands, please feel free to share them in the comments, or if you aren't comfortable sharing them publicly, you can message me as well. Honestly, a big thank you to Beauty Battalion, aka Lexi, because she documented so much of this and received so much hate in the process. And I hope that wherever she is now, she's doing all right. She hasn't posted on that account at least since 2020, but all I can do is hope for the best and thank her for her efforts. If you're someone who believes in cancel culture or canceling, what I have to say to that is that it really doesn't affect people, especially not the people that claim to have been affected by it. And truly, it's not about canceling a brand or a business or a person when they've done wrong, but it's pushing them to be better. If you are spending your money somewhere, yes, you do have a voice. You do deserve a voice and opinion. And I don't think anybody, brand, business, or otherwise, is above feedback. So 100% I want Kathleen Lights to do better. I feel like in the past she's missed opportunities to educate her audience or really go into depth about ways that she could be helping marginalized communities. In fact, she could speak to her own community about the ways in which they responded to her whole N-word thing, because it isn't enough to simply apologize for saying something. It isn't enough to apologize, period. But when you do apologize and then like posts about how you didn't need to apologize, girly, it's just so hypocritical. It's two-faced. There's a lot of cynicism there. To me, it's sad that rather than confront the racism within the community of Cuban Americans, she chose to put out a rather defensive apology twice. And in it, she did not mention her brother's post or the fact that she had made an apology and then essentially taken it back. And on Pride and Lights Lacquer, Lights Lacquer has not released a Pride bundle or collection since 2021. However, in their initial responses to the controversy in 2021, they mentioned to an LGBTQ creator that they had many activations in June that they were excited about that would specifically support the LGBTQ community and that would kind of offset the whole controversy with the Pride bundle they were trying to sell. And wouldn't you know, only one post was made celebrating an actress from Pose and how they had done her nails for some event, and then nothing else. And the next year in 2022, I did see that they sent their polish bundle to a trans creator, and they did post about this creator, and nothing else. That was one post in June. So all I can say is that it must have been a lie or an extreme exaggeration to claim that you had several activations in the month of June to support Pride and gay people. At that point, maybe you should have just taken down the Paint Your Pride campaign, which is what it was called, and put up a statement about how sorry we tried to make money off of gay people. It really seems that they weren't too interested in making too many posts about Pride in the first place. So what am I doing here, right? Am I making multiple videos about brands that have done things badly so that you never buy them again? No. Genuinely, what I want to do is inform people who do love nail polish, who have purchased from these brands, etc., to inform them of these controversial decisions, of the past of the creators, so that they can make informed decisions. We're choosing between brands here that are selling polish for $10 a bottle, $12, $14, $16. And when it comes to those prices, at the very least, I would like to make an informed decision that does include things like whether or not the brand owner is racist, exploitative of their workers, sexist, etc., etc. Those are all things that I care about. And maybe you care about them too, maybe you don't. I genuinely am not calling for anybody's head here, but what I am saying is that when we have the information and we have the ability to do better, I think we should. We have a lot of power. We have a lot of purchasing power. We have say with these brands and these companies. The only way that a business will take in this kind of negative feedback and change is if it affects their bottom line. That's why boycotts work. That's why these protests are even suggested in general. That's why strikes work. I don't think it's unfair for someone to choose to stop buying from a brand because they disagree with a decision the brand made. And I also don't think it's unfair to bring up decisions the brand made that were not properly discussed, that were swept under the rug, that people still care about today. In fact, I appreciate the fact that many people were willing to comment that Lights Lacquer had a controversial past when I posted about it, because to them it was important enough to mention. And to me it's important too, and they saw that. So it's extremely helpful to share this information along. Nobody would be spreading this information if it didn't affect them in some way, if it hadn't have harmed people. There's been a lot of research into how younger people, like Gen Z and millennials, are buying products. And that includes caring about something called the triple bottom line. And the triple bottom line is that you don't simply care about your business, your profits, but you also care about the social good that you are doing. Why do we care about this component? The audience, the customers, the very real people that you are selling products to exist outside of a vacuum, and so does your business. So when the business makes political contributions and the customers disagree with those contributions, they have every right to stop buying from that business. It's kind of hilarious to me when someone will claim to have been canceled and that their livelihood has been affected when truly what they did was make a decision that people disagreed with and lost part of that audience as a result. Sounds like a them problem. Now what am I gonna do with these, right? I already got them. I bought them before understanding the kind of person that Kathleen Lights was, and truthfully, I'll probably give them away. I'm not the kind of person that will throw away new products, etc. But I did try these, and they weren't my favorite. They weren't anything special. And that's another point that I'm attempting to make here, that 7 free, like these are cruelty-free, vegan, non-toxic polish, exists in abundance at this point. And yes, it's got the little Polly Pocket on it, right? Like, that's why I was like, oh my god, so cute, I loved Polly Pocket as a kid. These kinds of brand collaborations will continue to exist, in spite of Lights Lacquer. What I wish more of these brands would do when it comes to responding to controversy, or even simply responding to customer feedback, is treating human beings like human beings. We live in a world where we have an incredible amount of options for things like beauty products and more specifically nail polish. Now, narrowing down our choices gets a little simpler, in my opinion. When every brand around you has similar colors, good quality, fast drying, self-leveling, what else are you going to look at to distinguish them? You're going to look at who founded the company. You're going to look at what the company supports. You're going to look at whether or not they donate to charitable organizations. It's a smart thing to do. So while I'm disappointed in having bought from a brand that I disagree with, it's not the first time it's happened in my life. Certainly won't be the last. But what I'm glad to know now is that I won't be making this mistake again, at least with Lights Lacquer, because I know better. I also, when I bought their Polly Pocket polishes, bought a few of their regular ones, and I noticed when trying them that they were fairly thin. They weren't necessarily advertised as crelly, and yet they were very streaky, very thin. And these aren't colors or polishes that I wouldn't be able to find anywhere else. So I really am reviewing the brand, the business, and the products. I'd also like to say that what's disappointing about Lights Lacquer as well is that they are a brand that likes to emphasize that they are in Miami and that they are a Latina-founded and owned brand. So when it comes to being a part of a marginalized community, Kathleen Lights understands that that is a marketing tool, that being a Latina-owned brand means something to consumers. So if she can understand that, then why wouldn't she understand that harming the Black community goes directly against supporting marginalized communities? More than likely, the reason why the Pride Bundle ever existed and why these Polly Pocket collaborations and Care Bears, Friends collaborations on their site have ever existed is because if your brand doesn't stand out well enough on its own, you need to do something different. i.e., collaborate with some IP that will look really, really good on the bottle and will generate some of its own marketing. One last thing, I'll just leave you with this screenshot of a Google result showing up on the first page when I googled Lights Lacquer apologies. Interesting. So that's all I have to say about Kathleen Lights and Lights Lacquer. And I would like to take another moment here to thank you, Ralph Nader. Bye!